had to buy new microchips. I had provisions and a gun. I had them zombies on the run. Now I find it hard to explain how a zombie had my brain. To fight the undead you never sleep. In every shadow you see 'em creep. You seem amused with my somber mood. If you think I'm crazy, you're zombie food. All that's left is a gory stain when a zombie eats your brain. I have this friend prepping for the end. Tons of food and ammunition. She found a silo in a desert town. Don't want no strangers hanging around. Still one night in a darkened lane, it was a zombie that ate her brain. Now I'm a zombie, I don't need to think at all. I only react when I hear a human call. Now I'm a zombie, I don't feel the same. I look at you and wanna eat your brain. I'll shuffle on in and stare with them sunken eyes. Yeah, I'll get off on the cry. There'll be no goodbye. Locked in this room for days on end. This computer's my new best friend. Yeah, people saw me as paranoid. I was the one you must avoid. I had a 6-inch nail on the end of a chain. Still a zombie in my brain. I'd eat fast food if I had it all. The universe was safe if I made the right call. I thought I'd have time to react. Gigabytes of friends watching my back. All precaution went down the drain. Damn you zombie for eating my brain. Now I'm a zombie, I don't need to think at all. I only react when I hear a human call. Now I'm a zombie, I don't feel the same. I look at you and want to eat your brain. I'll shuffle on in and stare with them sunken eyes. Yeah, I'll get off on the cry. There'll be no goodbye.
That was just a bumper. You'll hear a bit more about the bumper as the story goes on. The idea with the Bay City Union wasn't just to stick around Brisbane. We wanted to go down south and play with the big boys down there. So Glenn Wheatley joins the band as rhythm guitarist, and we go straight to Sydney. We didn't really take Sydney by storm. We played the Bowl and a few of Ivan Damon's gigs down there. And we would have played our first licensed venue. We hadn't played to people drinking before. And while I was there, I saw 3 bands that made the Bay City Union look like the bunch of amateurs that we were. And that was Jeff St. John and the Id, Python Lee Jackson, and the Unknown Blues. Now, one of the gigs we did down there was called Susie Wong's. We did it as a door deal, so we just got whatever money came in through the door. So when we arrived, there was a fairly well-known Sydney musician, and these guys used to just all dress in black. And he had the job of getting rid of all the chewing gum that was stuck on the dance floor and on the carpet. So it gives you some idea of what the Susie Wong gig was like. At the end of the night, we made enough money for 4 hamburgers, and there was 5 guys in the band, so try and figure that one out. To save on accommodation, we basically just started sleeping at Bondi Beach. Eventually the police figure out what we're doing and confront us, and where are you blokes from? And we said, oh, we're from Brisbane. He says, there's the road to Brisbane, now fuck off. And that's exactly what he said to us. So we went straight to Melbourne. Melbourne was a completely different kettle of fish. You had these enormous town halls, and some of them would have dances on 2 or 3 times a week. So there was a fair bit of work. And you could also play unis, and a lot of schools had music. At one of those big dances, it wasn't unusual to have a jazz band, then a pop band, and a band like the Bay City Union would go on and play traditional blues. And if you were really lucky, especially on a weekend, you got to do the clubs late at night. The Thumping Tum, Sebastian's, Catcher, and eventually Bertie's opens up. But one of the things that really kept the Bay City Union alive was the lunch hour gigs, where you'd play to the workers. It was 10th Avenue and the Bowl. You'd play from 12 to 2 for 5 days of the working week. So it was great whenever you got one of those gigs, because that helped pay for the accommodation for the week. So we used to love doing 10th Avenue. The Bay City Union really fitted into the Melbourne scene like a hand in a glove. And after a few months, we were pretty much recognised as the traditional blues band. I think there was only one other in town, so that helped us out. So what I'm going to do right now is just do a little bit of Jimmy Reed. He was the greatest bomber of all, and it's still just fun playing this stuff.
You know that I love Now don't you hear me when I call? Big boss man. Now don't you hear me when I call? Well, you ain't so big, you just tall, that's all. Bright lights, big city, gone to my baby's head. Bright lights, big city, gone to my baby's head. She never did remember any of the things I said. You got me running, you got me hiding, you got me running, hide, run any way you want me, let it roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got me doing what you want me, darling, what do you want me to do? I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm going up, down, up, any way you want me, let it roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got me doing what you want me, darling, what do you want me to do?
After about 3 months in Melbourne, Jimmy Brailsford, who was the youngest in the band, he was missing his mum and dad, and he had a girlfriend, so he left and went back to Brisbane. Jimmy Brailsford eventually turns up in a band called Moose Malone, and they did a wonderful clip called The House of Blue Light. Have a look at it at some stage. Jimmy's not with us anymore, but he was a wonderful player. We sent out all the feelers because now we're looking for a new guitarist. And the very next day there's a knock on the door. Glenn Wheatley answers the door and comes back 30 seconds later and says, "Matt, do you remember the last gig we did in Brisbane? Tony Worsley played and he had a blonde guitarist and you reckon he was really good?" I said, "Yeah, he was a good player, that fella." He said, "Well, he's just joined the band." And of course this is Phil Manning. Now the real story. Tony Worsley's band had broken up in country Victoria, and Phil's dad had come over from Tasmania to take Phil back to Devonport and get him a real job. Now this is the one thing that freaks out any young up-and-coming musician. So he is desperate, he's got to find a gig. So he gets his dad to take him to 10th Avenue, he runs up the stairs, sees Con and says, "Con, is there any band looking for a lead guitarist?" And he said, "Oh," he says, "you're lucky. The Bay City Union, their guitarist has just left." He says, "Give me the address." So Con writes down the address, and then Phil goes down, "Dad, you shouldn't have come over from Tassie. I've got another band I'm starting with on the weekend." And Dad was a bit suspicious, and he said, "Well, where are these guys?" And he says, "Carlisle Avenue in Balaclava." So they get a cab to the Bay City Union flat, and Phil says, "Dad, you wait in the cab, I better tell them I'm here." So he runs up the stairs, knocks on the door, and Glenn Wheatley opens. he doesn't even say g'day, he just says Bay City Union, and Glenn says, yeah. I heard you're looking for a lead guitarist. He says, yeah. He says, just hang on, I'll go and get my guitar and suitcase. So that's how Phil Manning joined the Bay City Union, and we were really happy. In a few weeks, we were just going from strength to strength. Now, after we'd been in Melbourne for about 6 months, I saw that one of those bands that I'd seen in Sydney that made the Bay City Union look like a bunch of amateurs was coming to Melbourne. I thought, oh no, they'll just show us up. So they were playing at the Thumping Tom, so I went along the very first night, and after 2 songs it hit me like a brick. We're better. After 6 months of jamming with the best musicians in Melbourne, the band would sit down and listen to drum beats and just rearrange them. The band had improved out of sight, and we hadn't even noticed. But boy, everyone else had noticed, because bit by bit everyone started to steal players from the Bay City Union. The first to go was Glenn Wheatley. He went to the Masters Apprentices. Tony Butel was a fantastic soul and blues drummer, and he was asked to join the Levi Smith's Clefs with Barry McCaskill, who had always been a great mate of mine anyway. And Phil joined the Laurie Allen Review. There was a couple of girl singers in it. I think that was the end of Phil. So I'm out of work for quite a while. I kept the Bay City Union going with some Kiwi musicians, but we never had the same vibe again. So eventually I'm out of work for about 2 months. So I start writing songs. And I've always loved stories in songs. So I thought of this time where when the Bay City Union recorded their only single, which was Omo Ring with Mary Mary on the B-side, we had to go to Sydney. Now, I'd met a couple of blues fans in Sydney when we first went there, and one of them's name was Wally Mudd, and his brother was Starving Wild Dog, and his brother eventually plays the piano on Bop Boppin' the Blues. So Wally says, Matt, how would you like to meet the Wizard? I knew that one of the universities had their own wizard. I thought, oh, that sounds pretty good. So we're in the Darlinghurst, Paddington area, and there was a slight hill, and there was a house, but it had a cellar underneath it. So we went down into the cellar, and here's the throne of the wizard, and there was a big circle that came out from the throne. And so the wizard was talking to someone. He was a bit busy, so we just sat on the pillows in the circle, and a pipe goes past. Whoa, that's fair enough. And oh, another one. And after about the 3rd pipe went past, I turned around to Wally and I said, well, I've got the munchies. There's a 24-hour taxi depot just up the road. Coming up and I'll shout you a hamburger. So we went up to the 24-hour taxi depot, and we're munching on our hamburgers, just strolling back to the cellar. And we saw about 3 cars outside. And we kept walking, and then bit by bit we saw them throwing people into the cars, and we realised it was a bust. So we just quietly turned around and went the other way. So now I'm writing songs, I think, what would it be like if an innocent came down from the country and went to that cellar and someone said, do you want to smoke some shit? And he looks at it and he thinks it's dog droppings. And that's where this next song comes from. It's called The Great Hound Dog Dust Bust.
underground. I saw people smoking what to me looked like a hound dog's mouth. They said, "Come in, stranger, and welcome to the underground." All of a sudden, from the door there was a mighty thrust, and in walked a plainclothes man who said, "This is a bust." He acted quite strange. It seems he don't like hound dog dust. Well, if you go to the city from the country, tell you what's a must. You better get invited. You wonder what's lighted. Better get invited to the great. Better get invited to the great hound dog dust bust. Well, I dived out a window. What a lesson I had learned. Hound dog dust makes you crazy, especially when it's burned. I know it seemed mighty strange. You can try it if you want. I'm going back to the country. I know a source that I can tap. All these years I didn't know the scene was in my lap. I've got 24 sheepdogs. They certainly do a lot of that. With 24 sheepdogs, I'm gonna pick up every scrap. Well, if you go to the city from the country, tell you what's a must. You better get invited. You wonder what's lighted. Better get invited to the great. Better get invited to the great hound dog dust bust.
Now, I form a band called Horse. It's half original and half traditional blues. One day we're doing a gig and in walks Lobby Lloyd, and he's brought an old schoolmate with him, and he introduces me to Billy Thorpe. And I think, Billy Thorpe, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Sick and Tired, Mashed Potato, Poison Ivy, he had all these great hits. What on earth would he want to meet me for? So Billy says, "Look, Matt, Lobby holds you in fairly high regard, and he says that you are the man who's kept the blues going in this town. So what I'm going to do is move to Melbourne, team up with Lobby, and we're going to form a blues rock band." So I thought, wow, if Billy Thorpe wants to play blues of any description, it can only be a wonderful thing. And I said, "Thank you very much for the courtesy of telling me. I really appreciate that." And we talked for about an hour and remained really good friends till both of those great men left us. Okay, now Phil Manning's in Perth. The Laurie Allen Review broke up, and Phil Manning takes the place of a guitarist named Dave Hull in a band called the Beaten Tracks. They had won the Hoadleys Battle of the Sounds in Western Australia. So they want to move to Melbourne, and they're a very good band. And Wendy Saddington, who is the top female soul artist in Australia, sees them and says, look, I'd like you guys to be my backing band. She didn't like the name Beaten Tracks, so she changes the name to Chain, after Chain of Fools, an old Aretha Franklin song. Eventually, she breaks away from Chain. Ace Follington, who was the original drummer in Chain, told me that she couldn't have been in the band for more than 8 or 9 weeks before she went off and joined Jeff St. John and Copperwine. But eventually that breaks up too. And she comes back to Melbourne and gives me a ring. Says, Matt, I want to do a blues and soul night at the Thumping Tum. And I'd like you to do all the blues stuff and I'll do the soul stuff. And I said, oh, that sounds fantastic, Wendy. And she said, we'll get the guys from Chain to be the backing band. So that goes on for quite a few weeks, and it was just fantastic playing with Chain. It was such a good band. And this is the time of the supergroups. All of a sudden I'm in demand a little bit. And all the pop guys get together and form a supergroup called Axiom. And all the alternative guys, that's anyone who's not playing pop music, get together and we form a band called Genesis, which is virtually nearly 100% original. So bit by bit people come and people go, and the same thing was happening with Chain. And eventually the bass player of Chain left and joined Genesis on guitar. His name was Timmy Piper, a fantastic guitarist. But he also had a wonderful wife. Her name was Margaret, and she was an acid queen. Now, an acid queen was like a shaman. They'd get a very nice environment together, only get the best acid, and I think ours was Hawaiian Delight, and then she'd supervise that everyone was okay. I can remember being in a fetal position in the middle of the floor laughing my head off when Margaret went past and said, "Ooh, looks like Matt's having a good time." Of course I was. I only ever dropped acid one more time after that. I'd seen all I needed to see. So this song, Lightning Ground, comes from that experience, and it eventually became the B-side of Black and Blue.
In a dream about a mountain, reaching high above what's known, and drinking from a mystic fountain, soon my thoughts of life had grown. I'm walking in a cloud of thunder, enjoying all the things I found, endless shots of joy and wonder, like lightning going through the ground. And all the troubles of my life had gone away. I was living in tomorrow's world today. No more soldiers in armor ripping up the clay. No more kings and statesmen with people to betray. No more fighting, the lightning got its way. No more fighting, the lightning got its way. No more fighting.
At this particular time in Genesis, I had a drummer named Trevor Courtney, and Trevor lived in Jackson Street in St Kilda, just behind Fitzroy Street, in a block of flats. Also in that block of flats were two old mates of mine from Brisbane. They'd been in a band called Thursday's Children, and they just wanted to lock themselves in a room and become the best rhythm section in the world. Of course, this is Barry Harvey and Barry Sullivan, who eventually joined Chain. But at that particular time, they just wanted to practice and practice until they just had it down to perfection, being a rhythm section. So I'd visit Trevor, and then I'd go and see my two old mates, Barry Harvey and Barry Sullivan, Little Goose and Big Goose. They got the name Goose from the Sharpies. The Sharpies would go to a gig and say, "Hey, play Standing in the Shadows, I love you, Goose." So the Goose settled on those two. So one day I visit them, and "How are you guys?" And complete silence. You could have cut the atmosphere with a knife. And they said, "You don't know, do you, Matt?" And I said, What don't I know?" They couldn't even tell me. They showed me an old clipping from the Brisbane Telegraph, and it said, "Corporal Paul Evans has been killed in Vietnam." Now, Paul Evans was one of the guys who I stayed with when I went to Melbourne and bought all the blues records. And when he lived in Brisbane, he'd have to catch cabs everywhere because there was all these louts and thugs who were bashing up long hairs on the street. And now he's gone. He had shoulder-length blonde hair when I knew him. So that seemed to infuriate people. So within a couple of weeks, I started to march in the moratoriums. I just wanted to bring the troops home. I didn't want any more mums going through. He was an only child. I can only imagine what his mum was going through. So I started to march. I went in the moratorium in Brisbane, heaviest thing I've ever been a part of in my life. The police had taken their numbers off and they had batons and just wanted to break heads. And then I went in the moratorium in Melbourne. And being a musician with my sleeping hours, I turn up late, just as the procession is turning into Bourke Street. And there's some pro-war people there. And one of them had about a quarter of a brick and threw it at Jim Cairns. There was a big wharfie standing beside Jim, and he leant over, took the full force of the brick on his chest, and in good cricketer tradition, didn't even bother to rub it. And some politician had said, the only people who'll be marching in that moratorium will be long-haired poofters, sorry to use the phrase, but there was no political correctness in those days, and pack rape bikers. So there's a little old lady, she must have been about 80, and she's got a sign, "I'm a pack rape biker." And these were my kind of people, and they had very good humour. So I joined the procession, and we all sat down in Bourke Street, and I wrote this song, "My Arse is Black with Bourke Street."
You call me a long-haired queer, a pack bikey out to Maine. There's 70,000 others, guess they all must be the same. That's why I'm walking. Instead of being at home in bed, my arse is black with Bourke Street, and the news is falling in my head. It's you who makes the weapons, but it's me who has to die. And when I ask the reason, you only cheat and lie. That's why I'm walking. Instead of being at home in bed, my arse is black with Bourke Street, and good news is falling in my head.